One of the reasons I'm doing this is because anybody, Lord Chaitanya said, Je bhaje she boro. You know this one? Je bhaje she boro, abhakta hinchar, Krishna bhajana nahi jati kuladi bichar. Anybody who chants the holy name, they're great. Bora means big, they're great, Abhakta hinchar, and the non-devotees, we don't care about them. But anybody who chants the holy name is great. Lord Chaitanya said, anybody who chants the holy name even once is worshipable. You've heard that before. So this is not this purpose of this discussion. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming.
Sorry.
No, sorry. No, hey, it's good. I didn't expect very many people, but it's nice that you came because you're the leader, in the temple. It's a very big deal. So the point of this is, we're not that we're trying to criticize anybody, which you could take it that way. Right? You could take it that way. Back in 1972, what year are we today?
72.
Yeah. Back in 1972, Srila Prabhupada wrote a letter to Rupa Anuga Prabhu, who was the temple president in New York, and I was there at the time. And he said at the time, we have enough devotees now. We shouldn't worry about making more devotees. He said, when was this?
72.
Yeah. We've got enough devotees now. We don't need any more. Now, we should concentrate on improving their quality of the devotional service they're doing. Milk, if you take it and you water it down, it becomes useless. But if you boil it, it becomes thick and sweet. So now, in the Hare Krishna movement, when was this? 1970. We want to boil the milk and make it sweeter. So that's the point. Cheto darpana marjanam bhava mahadavagni nevapanam shreya kairava chandri kavitaranam vidyavadu jivanam anandam buddhi bardhanam pratipadam purnamrita svaranam sarvatma snapanam param vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtan. All glory to the Sankirtan movement, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years together, and it extinguishes the fire of repeated birth and death. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction, number one, of humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it helps us to take a taste of the full nectar for which we're always anxious. Yeah. Then there's another verse right after that. The next verse after that? You know it. You know it? I thought you'd know it. It goes, Nam Name Kare Bahuda Nijasarva Shaktis. You know it, good. I should have asked you. A little competition, brother and sister. It said, the holy name alone can render all benediction upon the living beings, and therefore you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda, etc. In these holy names you've invested all of your transcendental potencies, and there are not even any, there are not any?
Rules and regulations.
He says rules and regulations, is that right? There are no rules and regulations in chanting the holy name. Is that right?
Hard and fast rules.
Oh, which is it? There are no rules and regulations, or no hard and fast rules and regulations?
Hard and fast rules.
Okay, yeah. So, in the Hare Krishna movement, we got plenty of rules and regulations, right? You like what? When you chant? Come on.
Four regulative principles.
Yeah, the four regulative principles. So, should the person who chants, we could get into this. I don't want to get into this right now. But, if you're chanting, you can chant and you cannot follow the four regulative principles, right? Any examples of anybody who did that? In Lord Chaitanya's time or Srila Prabhupada's time? Sure. What about Chand Kazi? Was he following the four regulative principles? He was a Muslim.
No.
And he was advocating cow slaughter. Remember? But he chanted, Hare Krishna and Narayan. And Lord Chaitanya said, you've become pure just by chanting. Interesting. And when when Srila Prabhupada went to San Francisco, there was the first big event there in San Francisco, was called the Mantra Rock Dance. Did you ever read about that? Yeah. You read about it, yeah. Mantra Rock Dance. They got these rock bands to come to San Francisco, and in an auditorium they raised money. They had some rock, and then 2/3 of the way through, Allen Ginsberg came on stage with Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada had Allen Ginsberg. You don't know Allen Ginsberg, but at the time he was a guy who was like the beatnik hippie guru. He wasn't following the four regular principles, I'll tell you that. And Srila Prabhupada had him chant for all these people, and Srila Prabhupada was there. Yeah. So why are those rules and regulations there? There's 10 offenses in chanting the holy name of the Lord. Do they apply in Kirtan, or is it just for japa? Is it 10 offenses, do they apply to Kirtan too, or just japa? Both, yeah. These are all rules and regulations. But they're not hard and fast. It's not that if you're not following all the four regular principles, we're going to stop you from chanting Hare Krishna. No. So that's what it means. Sometimes people translate that as it's any person, any time, any place. Niyamatas smarane, niyamatas smarane nakala. Niyama means restrictions. Smarane nakala, like any time. And doing a yagya, you're supposed to do it in an auspicious time, right? Titi, muhurt, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What muhurts do you do? It's according to the moon, but usually there's an abhijit muhurt. Abhijit muhurt is when the sun is that's always auspicious. But do you have to worry about that when you chant Hare Krishna? No, you don't have to. But still, we have certain rules and regulations, and why is that? Why? I'm asking. This is not going to be me just telling you what to do. This is going to be asking you to engage. Yeah, why do we do that? Why?
Progress spiritually?
Yes! Very good. Because if you follow those careful rules and regulations, you'll make more spiritual progress. The end of that verse, there's of the offenses. If you chant Bahu Janma Kariyadi Shravanam Kirtanam Tibhutanapaya Krishna Pade Premadana, you can go on chanting for years. Bahu Janma means many lifetimes. But if you don't follow you do it offensively, you're not going to get Krishna Prema, which is the ultimate goal. There's a verse between where the Vishnu Dutas and the Yama Dutas are discussing. Any ideas what pastime that is?
Ajamil?
Yes. Ajamil. And the Vishnu Dutas, they said, hey, you can't take this this person. And the Yama Duta said, hey, he's a sinful guy. Come on, look at what he's doing. Look at this guy. Not following any rule and regulation. But the Vishnu Duta said, chanting of the holy names is the best way to relieve somebody from all sinful reaction. And it doesn't matter if they chant neglectfully, indicating something else, just for entertainment, or just, without paying attention. So why can't we do it that way? Why can't we chant that way? Why not? Because you're not going to get Krishna. You can chant just for entertainment. You can chant neglectfully. You can do that, and it's going to give you freedom. It's going to be very good for you, but you're not going to get, as you said, the highest level of Krishna consciousness. So all these what we could consider guidelines or rules and regulations are to make further progress in spiritual life. If you're chanting Hare Krishna, very, very good. Lord Chaitanya said, you're worshipable. You're worshipable, but you may not make it to Krishna Prema. You follow the difference. You understand? So why are we talking about this about Kirtan is we want to make further progress. Not you stay where you are, but make further progress in Krishna consciousness so that you go to the goal. We don't want to be stuck back there. Chanting just for entertainment. And chanting for entertainment is good. But just for that, it's not going to give you Krishna consciousness, the love of God. No. So, have you read Jayadvaita Maharaj's book? Anybody? Some people say it's controversial. It's not that controversial. But if you read the introduction to the book, the whole book is very good. I don't agree with every single thing there, but 95% I agree with. But in the introduction to the book, he lays out some of the ideas that I'm talking about, not exactly, but many of the ideas about why it's really important to discuss how we do kirtan. Because you know what happens over time? People change stuff. People change stuff. And we have to follow, there's a verse, he quoted that verse in the beginning of the book. Etanya vidyamananam ichyatam akutobayam yoginam nripanyanitam harinam anukirtanam. The doubtless and fearless way of success for everybody is to chant the holy names of the Lord, following the ways of the great authorities, he says. Following the ways of the great authorities. Anybody can chant, and you can get benefit, but if you follow the ways of the great authorities, that's the doubtless and fearless way of success for everybody. So I offer my respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, to Jayadvaita Maharaj, who's my senior godbrother, and I heard him always giving class in New York. I should respect him very much. And all devotees who chant the holy names, and take it as a serious project. But we want to go further. We want to go further and talk a little bit more about ways that our chanting can improve. You follow? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, in 1981, I went to India. It was the third time to India. Has anybody been to Benares here? Kashi? You've been to Kashi?
Yes, long time ago.
Yeah. How was it there? Yeah. You know the Lord Chaitanya went to Benares. You know that?
Yeah.
What did he do there?
It's chanting.
Yeah, but he specifically preached to the Mayavadi sannyasis, Prakashananda Saraswati, and also he taught Sanatan Goswami there for long period. Yeah. So I was passing through Benares and stopped there. It was right around the time of Gaur Purnima, just around that time. I heard somebody told me that there was going to be a Sankirtan festival the next morning in memory of Lord Chaitanya's visit to Benares. Oh, so I thought, let me go to see what it. So I got up early when it was right by the bank of the Ganges. There was a huge crowd assembled, maybe 500, 600 people, which isn't that big in India, I know, but still, it was there. And so somebody had a saxophone, somebody had a trumpet, somebody had a drum, somebody had a kartal, somebody had... And you know what they did? Everybody just played. Very enthusiastically. No melody. This is a true story. No melody, no tempo, and no kirtan. No chanting of the holy names. And this was in Benares, India. Just 480 years after Lord Chaitanya, and this is what kirtan had become. Just a bunch of instruments played loudly. So hopefully that won't happen in ISKCON. You follow? Over time. Okay. I have some notes here. I'm just looking at. Yeah. So, several, not long ago during the Sunday programs in the Hare Krishna temples, it became more commonplace for new guests and sometimes kids to pick up the kartals from the percussion instruments and bang away loudly during the kirtan. Does this ever happen?
Yes.
Usually not chanting along with the mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra. The parents of the kids seemed happy, excited. Why? Because their kids were participating in the kirtan, right? And they were not aware that their kids were actually causing disturbance, so the guests are actually causing disturbance by their loud bang at odds with the kirtan tempo, interfering with the vibration of the holy name. Now that's become more and more common in many temples. I've gone to several temples. It's very common now. So that adults or kids who have little or no practice in playing grab the kartals or mridanga to play along. They tend to play loudly, and mostly they play at a different tempo than the leader. It's kind of a free-for-all. The majority of the kartal players hardly chant, or mridanga players hardly chant. The result is a clangy, bangy din that often serves to drive away those with sensitive ears or hearts. Those who stay may have their hearing damaged or lost from exposure to the excessive sound. You follow? How did you ever measure the decibel level here during a kirtan? Decibel, I did in Philadelphia. It's a little over 100. And 100 means if you stay more than like a half hour, you can damage your hearing. So, I mean, Jai Dvaita Maharaj wrote a long thing about this on his personal website, jswami.org. It's very detailed about how he started to lose his hearing. But it's not uncommon that devotees have lost hearing by going in the kirtans. So, interesting point is that, you know who the kirtan minister is now? ISKCON kirtan minister. His name is Sri Krishna Chaitanya Swami. He used to be named Ekalavya. He used to play So he's the kirtan minister. So he's made arrangement that if any temple wants to get a decibel meter to monitor the kirtan decibels, the volume of the kirtan, there's some person who would donate for that. Because it's an important part. Yeah? So one devotee recently told me that every time she goes into a kirtan at a temple, she has one of those decibel meters on her watch. Do you have one? And it goes off every time she goes into a kirtan. So so according to Shruti Kirti Prabhu, you know Shruti Kirti? He said that Srila Prabhupada would sometimes call those kind of kirtans Rakshasa kirtans. Did you know that? True story, this is true story. I asked him about it, yeah, it's true story. So an argument could be made that by allowing or even supporting these things to go on, in the name of increasing participation in kirtan, the parents and temple administrators need to further develop their understanding of what the chanting of the holy names is and what it's for. Hare Krishna. And it could be said that there hasn't been adequate training in what kirtan is and how to participate in it according to the directions and example of Srila Prabhupada. So what's the whole purpose of kirtan? What's the purpose of kirtan? We put the kids on the spot. You're not kids, but still. You're younger. What's the purpose of kirtan?
Pleasing the Lord?
Yes. And so the whole purpose of the kirtan, the instruments and stuff like that, is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the kirtan, right? That's kind of bhakti. Yeah. And how do we know how to please Krishna? How do we know? I mean, anybody could say whatever pleases Krishna, but how do we know?
By knowing how to please the devotees.
What's that?
By knowing how to please the devotees.
We know how to please Srila Prabhupada.
Yes.
Because Srila Prabhupada is our link to Krishna. And if Srila Prabhupada says doing this, then we can know for sure. And if he doesn't say it. So we have to follow how Srila Prabhupada instructed us to do kirtan. And then we can know how to please. Otherwise, we don't know. We have no idea. Who do I know? I don't know anything. But Srila Prabhupada knows. He's in touch with Krishna. And so he can tell us how to please Krishna in our kirtan. So, and what is the thing that pleases Krishna most during the kirtan? What aspect? The tune, the instruments, the volume. What pleases Krishna most? What's that? Bhav, yeah. And that's an internal thing. That's very true. Very internal thing. But the most important thing in the kirtan is not the tune, It's not the Mridanga or Kartals. It's the holy name, the chanting of the holy names. That's the most important thing of everything else. Everything else is secondary to the sound of the holy names. So Srila Prabhupada was in, do you agree?
Yeah.
And the internal thing is the bhav. You're correct. I'm doing stuff that's more external even. This is admittedly external. Srila Prabhupada was in New York, and a devotee from Boston came down from New York, and at that time they had a radio show in Boston where they were reading stories from the Krishna book, and on the radio, on a radio show, and so they recorded some of the shows on tape, and they brought it to Srila Prabhupada for him to hear in New York. And when it was the one they played to him was Krishna subdues Kaliya, and during that part, Krishna subduing Kaliya, Mother Yashoda comes to the bank of the Jamuna, and Krishna goes under, with grabbed by Kaliya serpent, and Mother Yashoda goes, what does she say? What does Mother Yashoda say? Krishna! Krishna! And Prabhupada said, stop the tape. Stop the tape. He played it again. He said, that's how you have to cry for Krishna. That's the bhav. Right. So what we're talking about is stuff around that, but to support the bhav. So the most important thing is the chanting of the holy names in the kirtan. Everything else is secondary. So there was a time when Prabhupada was in London at Berry Place, and it was the Bhaktivedanta Manor, and he was resting. It was the middle of the day, and he called his secretary over and said, "The drum should not be louder than the voice. The drum should not be louder than the voice." And his servant was Abhiram. And Abhiram couldn't even, he listened very, very carefully. And then he could hear way downstairs, there was an arti going on, and the drum was playing louder than the voice. You could hear the drum, but you couldn't hear the voice. So that's to emphasize the same point I'm making, right? That the most important part of the kirtan is the sound of the holy name, not the instruments. So there's a famous, that applies not just to drum, but to things like kartals and other things, right? There's a famous kirtan teacher in Mayapur, and he says, this isn't from Srila Prabhupada, but he says, the drum should be half the volume of the voice, and the kartal should be half the volume of the drum. Wow. Do you believe this? This is stuff. Okay. So in ISKCON kirtans, this doesn't always happen. You know? So we don't want to make it so that people have to make a choice between participating in the kirtan and losing their hearing and stuff like that. Okay. So then I have a bunch of ideas to help with people to improve the quality of ISKCON kirtan. You ready for this? These are recommendations. And like I said, Lord Chaitanya said there's no hard and fast rules. No hard and fast rules. So these are not hard and fast. These are, what's the opposite of hard and fast? Soft, and a little bit flexible, right? So I'm not telling you what to do. They're soft and flexible, but think about it. Yeah, think about it. Okay, these are for consideration, only consideration. Oh, and one thing that went along with that, I learned how to play the drum from a devotee named Madhusudana. Anybody know Madhusudana? He was in New York anyway. You must have met him.
Yes.
And he passed away last year. But he went to the West Coast. He was working at ISKCON Press. But he taught me, and he had been taught by Srila Prabhupada directly. To close the curtain. So he taught me. So he told me this. He said, when you play the drum, Prabhupada said, if you don't chant when you play, don't play. If you don't chant when you play, don't play. Oh, and he taught me that, so it's a big deal for me, because it came from Srila Prabhupada, he said. I didn't hear it directly from Srila Prabhupada. But then, I read in the Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava, you know that book? Bhakti Vikas Swami, Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava. It's a nice, good book. But he has a quote in there, that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava, in there he said that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta told his kirtan people, playing fancy drum beats, he said, don't play unless you chant. So you know what that's called? Parampara, right? He said, Prabhupada said. So does it happen in kirtans that people don't chant while they play? Does it happen?
Yeah.
All the time, right? And actually, it's getting more and more prevalent. And there's a few things that happen. One thing that happens is that people choose a tune that's hard to follow. You know that? What is the purpose of, we know the purpose of kirtan. How about Sankirtan? What's the purpose of Sankirtan? San means together, right? So what's the purpose of Sankirtan? Yes? And how is it different than regular kirtan? San means together. You want to get everybody participating together, right? San, together. Sangha, sangha. Or san is also full or together. So part of the purpose of Sankirtan is to get people involved. And together we please Krishna, isn't it? Yeah. So then we should pick a tune that's relatively easy to chant so everybody can participate, right? Now, it's not uncommon nowadays to people make these funny tunes that are really hard to follow. But Srila Prabhupada was asked by a devotee named Ekayani. You know who Ekayani is?
Yes.
You remember Ekayani? I remember Ekayani, yeah. So she asked Srila Prabhupada, are there any tunes that are bona fide when chanting Hare Krishna? And you know what Srila Prabhupada wrote back? 1971, this is 1971. Any guesses? Any tunes that are bona fide? He said, as long as you chant Hare Krishna, any tune is bona fide. Any tune is bona fide. Okay? And then he said, in a letter to Sueshwar, he said, but most important is it should be simple. It should be simple. And then when he was talking to Allen Ginsberg, there was a thing in Columbus, Ohio, where Allen Ginsberg came, and they had a big festival there in the Ohio State University. And they were discussing, and Allen Ginsberg asked them the same thing. What tune should we use? And Srila Prabhupada said, you can use tune as you like, but keep it simple, he said. So what's the point of the simple tune? So people can chant, right? So the first rule of kirtan, if there is a rule, right? That's it. The first rule of kirtan, can anybody guess what the first rule of kirtan is? It's a tough one. The first rule of kirtan
Keep it simple.
is to chant. The first rule of kirtan is to chant, and all those other things like keeping the tune, the volume, the instrumentation, all of that are to support the chanting. You follow? So the first rule of kirtan is to chant. Okay. So then I was suggestions here. While teaching, these are my suggestions, which are not hard and fast. Okay. While teaching kirtan and the use of accompanying instruments, emphasize that participation in kirtan is not primarily playing the mridanga or kartals. It is primarily the chanting and hearing of the holy names of the Lord. You follow? Okay. The instruments are meant to accompany that chanting, not to replace it or drown it out. Playing instruments without chanting the holy names should be discouraged. Listen to this one. Once a person develops the habit of playing instruments but non-chanting, it's hard to change. That's why, when they play the drum, you have the bowls. Did you learn those bowls? Te, na, ta, te, ke. Yeah. To could get you in the practice of chanting while you're playing, because otherwise, usually if a person learns and they haven't practiced chanting while they learn, it's very difficult later. There's a story about a woman who was teaching something, maybe some music, and she asked her students what they knew already. Have you heard this one? She asked her students what they knew. And so for those people who said they knew something, she charged an extra fee. Why is that? Why is that? Why is that, you know? Yeah, because you learned it wrong in the beginning. You have to take time to stop them. You have to teach them right. So it also applies to Kirtan. The Kirtan teaching should be from the very, very, very beginning. Okay. Once a person develops the habit of playing an instrument but not chanting, it's difficult to change. For beginners, practicing how to chant and also play instruments during the Kirtan should primarily be done outside the main temple Kirtan. Did you follow this one? So the Kirtan, that we do on Sunday, so it shouldn't be for people to learn how to play. When Lord Chaitanya first began the Sankirtan movement, he was having Kirtan every night. Where was that? Srivas Thakur's house. So he had his intimate associates chanting. And other people wanted to join. And you know what he told them?
No.
You don't know what he told them? He said, no, you can't come in. You have to. He said, go home and practice, go home and play. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that he called that his Lord Chaitanya's nocturnal school of Kirtan. And he's doing this. So he told people, go home and practice in your home. That's what he said. Because if people are not knowing how to do it, they're practicing it. It doesn't. Yeah. So it's a little harder nowadays. You know why? Because in the early days of ISKCON, which is different than now, everybody was living in the temple, and they had doing kirtan 5 times a day. That's even if you don't take into account that they're going out on Harinam Sankirtan on the street for several hours a day. So there's plenty of time to practice in the kirtan in the daily schedule. But now, how often are people doing kirtan? We don't know, not much. Not so. So then, in that environment, it's going to be very difficult for people to learn to practice, learn their skill well. So practice at home, get good, and then in the beginning, when you come to the temple, the people who are new shouldn't play very loudly. Why do you think that is? Yeah, they have to learn. So if the louder you play, three things happen when you play loudly. Any guesses? The instruments, I'm talking the instruments. You can chant as loudly as you want. Lord Chaitanya, the Srinivasacharya's Sadgoswami Astak said, Krishna ut kirtana gana nartana paro premam nitam boniti. Ut kirtan means loud kirtan. But what was loud? The voice, the kirtan, not the instruments. Okay. So three things, negative things happen if the instruments are loud. Number 1.
Hearing loss.
Hearing loss, that's one, yeah.
Disrupts the kirtan.
It overwhelms the sound, the sound of the holy name. It overwhelms the sound of the holy name. And the third one is, if you have to follow the leader, if somebody's playing loud, you can't follow the leader because that sound, so it makes everything mishmash. You follow? Okay. Okay. In order to learn steadily how to follow a lead tempo, as should be done in kirtan, consider initial kirtan practice being done in time with a metronome. You know what that is? That's a metronome. This is what anybody who learns music, in South India, people who do South India, anybody South Indian here? You know this.
Yeah.
They do this. That's because the teacher does this to keep on the beat. So this, what happens is, because what usually happens is people don't like to follow the beat of the kirtan leader. They make up their own beat. We'll talk about this a little later. And so unless you practice following the beat of the leader, everything becomes kind of a mishmash too. So that's a little problem. Okay. All right. And then for similar reasons, the number of instruments played during the temple kirtan should be regulated. The number of instruments, how many drums, how many kartals. Get 10, 12 pairs of kirtans. Inside the temple is different than outside the temple. Inside the temple, what happens? There's, echoes, you're less inside. Outside is easier, but here. So it has to be regulated. I was just in Vrindavan. And in Vrindavan, they had 1,000 devotees coming to Mangalarti. You were there. 1,000 people coming to Mangalarti. How many mridangas did they have? One. How many kartals did they have? One. 1,000 devotees. And the kirtan was great. It was wonderful. It's ecstatic. One mridanga, one kartal. What was the major sound? The chanting. Yeah, that was the great thing. Yeah. So playing the instruments during kirtan should ideally be seen as a privilege, not a right. For those who still insist on playing instruments during kirtan without chanting, like sometimes happens, they have these little eggs that have little BBs inside. You can go like this. You know those? That's for people, if they don't want to chant, okay, give them those. You follow? Sometimes with kids and stuff like that, you got to give them something. You follow? So having those things, keep them occupied, but they're not going to, and it doesn't make that much sound, those things. No big deal. Okay. Consider using a tune that's relatively easy to follow. Okay? Yes. And then, I told you everything about that. Yeah. So this is a story, a true story. In 1976, I was helping, Jayananda Prabhu?
Making cards.
Huh?
The one who was making cards.
You know Jayananda? Yeah. He was the first devotee in ISKCON who really popularized, along with Srila Prabhupada, the Rath Yatra festivals all over the United States and then the world. So he constructed the carts. So he came to New York in 1976 for the first big Rath Yatra in New York, which the anniversary will be next year. So he used to, after that, he stayed in New York for some time, and he led a kirtan party on a flatbed truck. And we'd go in the flatbed truck, and we'd drive around Manhattan and have kirtan in the back so people would hear like that. So on the cab of the truck, there was a big bell. Maybe Vrindavan Chandra remembers. So during the kirtan, Jayananda would get so excited, he'd be ringing that bell. Bang, 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 bang. And this is my senior godbrother. He's very respectful, very, advanced devotee. Prabhupada said he probably went back to Godhead. He wrote a letter. And so after a while, nobody wanted to come on the kirtan party. You know why? Any guesses?
Big bang.
Yeah, they were getting a headache from the bang, 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 bang. So finally, I couldn't get anybody to go. That was my job. So I asked, so Jayananda Prabhu asked me, what happened, Vishnu? How come nobody's coming? How come nobody's coming? So I didn't want to tell you, but, the loud banging, it's just people get a headache, and so then you know what he said? He said, oh, Vishnu Gada, you should have told me, I get carried away, and so yeah. So if even Jayananda Prabhu, who's a very advanced person, can get carried away with that, so certainly people can get carried away. But he asked me, please tell me. So I'm telling you. You follow? We don't want to drive people away by the sound of the instruments in the kirtan. You follow? So the first rule of kirtan, this is my rule. What's the first rule of kirtan? Chant. Is that controversial? All right. First rule of kirtan is to chant. It's a big deal though. I don't want to pick on youth, but there's a lot of youth that don't chant when they play. You know that? Yeah. I'm not picking on you specifically, but this happens. Okay. That's rule 1. Okay. I call that Kirtan, the Kirtan ABCs. You got time. Questions, comments, reflections, criticisms, corrections. So I'm having a little fun here, you see that? It's fun to talk about Kirtan. We don't talk about it. But anything?
So in temples you go to, maybe Philadelphia, how do you accomplish getting this change of behavior?
Yeah, that's a good question. I said that here too, but I didn't. It's to have regular classes about it and instruction about it. You gotta have. Like here in Tawako, you've got some really good kirtan people. Madan Gopal is very good, and Namras. So, but these things have to be discussed. You know, if you try to enforce it right then, it doesn't work. Usually what happens is, like if I'm doing a kirtan, I'll tell somebody, say, please stay on the beat. I'll say, please stay on the beat. Not you, but somebody. Please stay on the beat. And then they'll go double time. And I'll say, hey, please come. And they'll get mad at me. Usually that's what happens. 9 times out of 10, that's what happens. You're trying, what are you I'm trying to, because there hasn't been any prior instruction and discussion about it. So to have regular, and when, like I said here, when the instruction goes on, I mean, we had somebody come we had a summer camp in Gitanagara for years. I'm doing it this year in Maryland. But the devotee who came was very well-known kirtan teacher, but he didn't teach this basic point. Basic point being, when you play the instruments, you got to chant. That's the basic number 1 point. So if you have people who teach that basic important point first, and have regular discussions about it. You can have, like I was saying in the beginning, I don't think you were here, like in professional sports, they have a coach and an assistant coach, 15 assistant coaches, and they all make $1 million, isn't it? And they have they take video of them doing what they're doing, whether it's swimming or playing basketball or something, so they can make sure it's just right, they reach their potential, right, the best. And what do? Is there any review? We don't have any review. How do we have review? So, I mean, this also could be talked about, like, when there's classes, this is another subject, but when there's classes on the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita class or something, probably a good idea to have some kind of review. Because how do we improve? How do we improve? We got to improve by feedback. But if you don't get feedback, Lord Chaitanya said, Trinadapi sunichena torodapi sahishnuna amanina manadi kirtaniya sadhari. We have to, in order to keep on chanting, you got to do it in a humble state of mind. Well, what does a humble state of mind mean? It means if somebody suggests something to you, you're open to take it. Right? That's humility. So Lord Chaitanya, he was a Pandit, Nimai Pandit, and he went to, where was that? Gaya. And he went to Ishwar Puri, and Ishwar Puri told him, Murka, you're a Murka. What is a Murka? Fool, he says. And you know what Lord Chaitanya said? What do you mean I'm a fool? What are you talking about, I'm a fool, right? Did he say that?
No.
No. He accepted it, what his spiritual, he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, he's not a fool, but his spiritual master was giving him instruction and he accepted it. He showed us. So similarly, in order to do devotional service, in order to improve our devotional service, we have to be open to some kind of feedback. It may not be always correct. That's okay. But how can I improve? That's part of being humble. Is saying, how can I improve? Let me try to improve. So, I made a proposal. It was rejected, but I made a proposal in Philadelphia that we should have feedback for the classes that are given, because somebody who wants to improve, they'll be really happy to get the feedback. But it's maybe not always given. They may not always be accurate, but that's how we improve. Who's gonna tell us if we don't? Those are some suggestions. Classes, discussions, That's why we're having this thing today. And it's nice that you came. I appreciate it. It's especially nice that you came, because this is for, consideration. This is not, the final word. This is just considerations. All right. First rule of Kirtan is? Yeah. Okay. I got a second rule of Kirtan. Anybody? And okay, guess. We got a little time. Guess second rule of Kirtan. Any guesses?
Dance.
Dance. That would be good. Good. Well, no, it's not the one I have. I'm not saying it's not good. It's not the one I have. The second rule of Kirtan is follow. Hearing is important, but the Kirtan, that's the Shravanam part, right? Shravanam, Kirtan. So the second rule of Kirtan, these are my rules. These are my rules. I made them. Is to follow the leader. Okay. Maybe, I don't know if Vrindavan Chandra Prabhu was there. In 1971, Srila Prabhupada came to Brooklyn Temple, and he chanted, he said, I have this, this song, Jaya Radha Madhava? You know this song? You think you can follow me? He said like that. Because we had heard that Srila Prabhupada was chanting a new tune. He hadn't chanted this before. He started it in India, in the early part of 1971. And so we heard he was chanting this new tune, this mantra, and we got the words to the mantra, but we didn't know the tune. So a devotee named Bharadwaj, who was Gauravani's father, he made up a tune. It went like this. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Yashodhana. Yeah, catchy tune, right? And we were chanting that way. So Srila Prabhupada came in, the first morning class he gives, you know the song Jaya Radha Madhava? Do you think you can follow me? There was several hundred devotees in the temple. He said, yes, we can follow. So then Srila Prabhupada started chanting, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. And we responded. What do you think? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Yeah, true story. This is a true story. What does that mean? What happened? How come? But Prabhupada kept on chanting. He kept on chanting. And gradually, we caught on. It took a while. But what was happening there? What was happening?
Conditioning.
Huh? Yeah, conditioning. I say we had a tune in our mind, right? And sometimes there's a tune in your mind, and you can't follow. It gets in the way of following the leader. And there's also, not only there are tunes in our mind, there's a tempo in our mind also. You follow? The tempo. So sometimes somebody's going to play with certain tempo, but you have a tempo in your mind, you're playing your tempo, not that person's tempo. When even given this class, when Srila Prabhupada chanted the Panchatattva Mahamantra, do you know that he chanted Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrind. So he elongated the Gadadhar when he chanted. But there was a devotee in New York who changed it, and it became everybody. So everybody says now Gadadhar Shivasadi. But Prabhupada chanted Gadadhar. So even though I'll talk about this class, and then if we chant it, you'll see everybody will chant Gadadhar Shivasadi, and they can't follow Gadadhar. Because why? You have a certain, it's already in your brain, in your mind, in your conditioning, as you said. So there's a certain conditioning we have that's there. Do you think that those conditioning might affect somehow we do Kirtan?
Yes.
Okay. And if you go to has anybody been to an orchestra performance? Professional stuff. And an orchestra, there's the orchestra with there's the violins and the cellos and the oboes and all that. And then there's the audience. In the orchestra, who gets, if it's a professional, who gets paid the most of all the people in the orchestra?
The conductor.
You're sure of that? Why? Why does the conductor get paid the most?
Because he keeps everyone in sync.
Yes, yes. So he's keeping how does he do that?
He shows them how to do that.
Yeah, yes. So he does that, yeah. He does that like this, okay. I'm reading from Wikipedia, which is not like Bhagavad Gita, but it's, Wikipedia. Conducting is the art of directing a musical performance that has been defined as the art of directing simultaneous performance of several players or singers by the use of gesture. The primary duties of the conductor are to interpret the score in a way that reflects the specific indications, set the tempo, ensure the entries of the different ensemble members, and shape the phrasing. Conductors communicate with their musicians primarily through hand gestures, the aid of a baton, or other gestures like facial expressions and eye contact. A conductor usually supplements their direction with verbal instructions. So with their musicians in rehearsal. Okay, so in a kirtan, who's the conductor? Well, the leader, right?
Who's leading it?
Okay. So a conductor in a regular orchestra, how many things are they doing? Just one, yeah. In a kirtan, how many things is the kirtan leader doing? Isn't it? They're chanting, they're usually playing an instrument, and they're also trying to keep everybody together. So it's a much more difficult thing even than a conductor. And the conductor is given the most, right. So this is a big deal. It's a big deal. Now, if you went to an orchestra and sat in the audience and you brought your saxophone or your drums and you started playing along with the orchestra, what would happen? Yeah, you think so? You think so? Okay. How come? Yeah, and you're not playing along with you're not playing along with the conductor. Nobody would do that. Nobody would do that. Okay. So the conductor is given the most importance. Why? Men or women, doesn't matter, because they are able to keep the musical. I didn't know the musical piece together. Now I'm not saying we should be musicians, professional musicians. They get paid. We don't get paid. But there are certain ways that they learn, they practice to keep the musicians together. And how do they do that? How does the conductor keep everybody, besides what we said already? What are some things? I mean, there's pretty famous kirtan leaders in ISKCON also, and some of them are very good. They're very good. How do they keep people together? I'm asking. You got to study it a little bit. You have to think about it, because you might be one of those people sometime did. Yeah.
You sing during the audience sings.
Yeah. So usually you'll find that the kirtan leaders they keep their own people. Did you ever notice that? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they're on the stage away from the other people who have their own people together. And not only that, but they practice, and they practice with their people. Did you know that? I bet there's a devotee here in New Jersey who plays drum for Madhava. You know Madhava? Very, very good. His kirtan is very nice. I like his kirtan very much. So he just spontaneously told me. I didn't ask him. He spontaneously told me. He said, I started playing with Madhava, and after the first half hour, I felt like I was beaten to a pulp. True story. True story. What does that mean? He was corrected so many times, it was unbelievable, right? So he accepted it. He learned from that, and then he was able to play, right? But so it's not that there was a free for all, but he accepted the instruction from the leader, and he could follow, and he practiced. There was a rehearsal, and like I said before, it used to be that we would do kirtan all the time. Now, very rare we do kirtan. It's not, maybe once a week, perhaps sometimes, or even less. So rehearsal is one important place, and practice with the people that you want to play. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. What are some other ways? I have some other ways. that you might keep it together. Regular group practice, discussions about Kirtan and the tempo quality, regular didactic sessions with Kirtan and Kirtan. What challenges may come up in the synchronicity of the Kirtan? What challenges might occur? Participants may tend to play at the tempo of the mind rather than the tempo of the leader. This is especially true if the tempo is slow. Did you ever notice this? It's hard for people to play a slower tempo. Srila Prabhupada used to often start slow. Not always, but sometimes it's very slow. Because generally speaking, there's three modes of nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And the passion mode is got to speed up. Maintenance is sattva going. Yeah. Participants may not pay close attention or give little value to the established tempo, or the result of little instruction or limited practice. Participants may play instruments at a loud volume, making it more difficult for themselves and others to perceive the tempo established by the kirtan leader. If the participant happens to play at an accelerated tempo, if one person in the kirtan starts to go faster than the established tempo, you know what happens with everybody?
They go fast.
They follow that person. Did you notice that? You know that? If once just one person has to play, then everybody goes with that person. It's very interesting. It is more difficult to follow a kirtan leader with a person who's leading by harmonium than a kartal or mridanga. Do you know that? Why? You know why?
Harmonium softer.
Yes, it doesn't have very distinct tempo. You know, kartal is you hear it, but a harmonium is a little, you can't hear the tempo so easily. You got to pay more and more attention. So usually what happens if somebody leads with a harmonium is people take over, the instruments take over. Yeah. Okay. What did Srila Prabhupada do when devotees were not playing according to the tempo of the kirtan leader? Any ideas? So what are you supposed to do? Sometimes you just tolerate it. In fact, even if you go to prabhupadvani.org, you know, that's where they have like all the Prabhupada's kirtans there. Sometimes you can hear even there that the kartals are off. And Srila Prabhupada just tolerated. But he didn't always tolerate. In 1973 I was there in New York, and you can see it. If you search for Srila Prabhupada teaching kartals in YouTube, there's a YouTube video, 1973. Pancharatna. You know who Pancharatna is? Pancharatna? He's in Mayapur. His mother gave him a video recorder, and he used it first time in 1973 in New York. So he was videotaping Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada, there was a kirtan, and the devotee leading was named Parikshit, artist Parikshit. And the kartal player started to speed up. So Prabhupada said, stop the kirtan. Why are you speeding up? Don't speed up. You have to follow the kirtan leader. Follow the kirtan leader. Follow, he said it. So then, like that. So sometimes he stopped. And then in the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Satsvarup Das Goswami, he also mentions that Srila Prabhupada in the early days sometimes would stop the kirtans to make sure that, to enforce that the persons playing would follow the leader. So, what did celebrated ISKCON Kirtaniyas do to maintain tempo? Lord Chaitanya restricted the participants, right? Yeah. In early ISKCON, like in ISKCON where I was in New York City, the people who played the instruments, they were controlled. A kirtan leader may make a humble request to, at the beginning of the kirtan, that participants give special attention to following the tempo. No, doesn't work. That's what I said. For this part of it, it's especially important. Srila Trinadapi Sunichena Tororapi Sihishnana Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadakari. Okay. Alright, Hare Krishna. That's number 2. Number 3. Are there qualifications for a kirtan leader? This is, I'm going to ask people. Are there qualifications for a kirtan leader?
It should be.
You what?
It should be.
What?
For all the reasons you said so far.
Is it a hard or fast rule?
No.
Is it a rule? It's a rule that's not hard and fast. Yeah. Okay. In most temples of the Hare Krishna movement, certain qualifications are required to perform arti.
Yes.
Isn't it? Yeah. Or to cook for the deities, isn't it? Or to deliver a lecture in the temple. So the question is, are there any qualifications required for leading a kirtan? What did Srila Prabhupada recommend? Do you know? Well, he said, there's the essay on chanting Hare Krishna. Have you read that? It's one of the first essays. It's in the little pamphlet that they give out all the time. Yeah. When Hare Krishna is chanted by a pure devotee of the Lord in love, it has the greatest efficacy on the hearers. And as such, chanting should be heard from the lips of the pure devotee of the Lord, so that an immediate effect can be achieved as far as possible. But as far as possible, chanting from the lips of non-devotees should be avoided, as milk touched by the lips of a serpent has poisonous effects. So, what was that? So what did he say?
We should hear from non-devotees.
Non-devotees. And what was the other side?
From the lips of a pure devotee.
Yeah. So what does it mean, a pure devotee? What does that mean, a pure devotee?
Who follows the rules and
Follows the
regulations.
regulations.
Pure devotee, anyabilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanabritam anukulyani krishnana shilam bhakti, means someone who doesn't have any other desire but to please Krishna. They're not doing it for some other things. So a pure devotee doesn't necessarily have to be highly elevated in realization. When Lord Chaitanya went to Benares, there were 2 devotees there, Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar. And they knew about the Mayavadi sannyasis who were criticizing Lord Chaitanya, but they couldn't defeat them in argument. So Lord Srila Prabhupada says that they were pure devotees, but they were kanishtas. They were on the lower level in realization. So pure devotee doesn't have to be highly elevated in their realization, but their desire is only to satisfy Krishna. You follow? Okay. So that's the pure devotees, to satisfy Krishna. So what kinds of other motives might come in to a leader of kirtan when they chant the holy names?
Aspiring devotee.
What other motives? What other motives? Yeah. So we're saying that a pure devotee is someone who has the only motive is to please Krishna. But do we have other motives in our lives sometimes?
Yes.
Like?
Fame.
Yeah. So Lord Chaitanya characterized it. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim. Right? Na dhanam. What is na dhanam? What is dhanam? Money. Janam. Fame, wealth, followers. Yeah. Sundarim. Beautiful partners. Yeah. So dhanam. Do people do kirtan for dhanam? Do people do kirtan for dhanam? Yes. It's called professional kirtans. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta used to tell the story of the 4 Anna Bhava. 4 Anna Bhava. You know that story? It's a very nice story. So, in Bengal there were two villages. In this Bengal, it was a tradition, they would have competition between villages who could do the best kirtan. 4 Anna Bhava. 4 Anna Bhava. Anna means what? You know what an Anna is?
What?
Anna? It's the old, used to be a rupee, and then parts of a rupee were Anna. I didn't say it right. Anna, yeah. Anna Bhava, yeah. So two villages were competing with their kirtan parties, and each village hired an expert kirtaniya who could be, it would cry and roll on the ground and act like they were in ecstasy. So one village did their kirtan, and then the other village did their kirtan, and village 1 won, and village 2 lost. So village 2 people came up and they attended their kirtan. They said, "So what's up? What happened? How come you lost?" So they said, "Well, how much bhava do you expect for 4 annas?" Because that's all they get. That's all they're paying him, right? So when somebody is doing a kirtan for money, you don't know is the ecstasy because of actual ecstasy, or is it because they're making a show for money? You don't know. That's the danger. Danger. I'm not saying you can't pay a kirtan. I'm not saying that. But in terms of the Vedic system, there were Brahmins had 6 duties. 6 duties. Yajan, yajan, patan, patan, dana, patigraha. Yajan, yajan means they do sacrifices, and they teach others how to do sacrifice. This patan, patan means they learn the scripture and they teach others the scripture. Dana, patigraha means they accept in charity and they give in charity. So a Brahmin can accept in charity. That's okay. So it's not wrong for a Brahmin to. But then patigraha means they also give in charity. So generally speaking, the Brahmin, somebody who's a Brahmin, doesn't charge a fee. Do you follow? It's not like a salary. They accept whatever donation will be given. And they may use some or all of it in the service of the Lord. Not that they're trying to they only keep what's necessary for themselves. So it's not that there can't be any monetary exchange with kirtan, but you gotta be careful how do you know whether it's the bhava is 4 anna bhava or 100 rupees bhava or $1,000 bhava. You don't know. Is it so that it's good business, or is it because they're actually feeling ecstasy by the chanting of the holy names? That's called dhana. Nadhanam. Najanam. Najana means
High birth.
Huh?
High birth.
Huh?
High birth.
No, Najanam. Jana means followers. So in the kirtan, we sometimes do things because everybody else is doing it. There's isn't it? Because that's what keeps you, it keeps you in your group. So in Montreal in 1969, Srila Prabhupada was in Montreal, and there was a big kirtan in the temple in Montreal. And Prabhupada's quarters were down the street, and so he was walking back to his quarters with a devotee named Pradyumna. He knows Pradyumna, and the temple president. And so the temple president says, I really enjoyed that kirtan. And Srila Prabhupada immediately shot back, kirtan is not for your enjoyment, it's for Krishna's enjoyment. So I thought, wow, what's this? I thought automatically, you water the root of the tree and all the parts of the tree get satisfied, or you put food in the stomach, so your kirtan automatically satisfies. But from this I could understand, there must be other things that people do in the kirtan that might be for the general janam people, but not for pleasing Krishna, right? Right. I thought like that anyway. So then we went to a festival in Puerto Rico, and you know what alap is? Alap? You know what alap is? Alap. There's different kinds of alaps. But Srila Prabhupada would stop people from doing alaps in the kirtan. Do you know that? Did you know that? Yeah. I mean, it would happen more than one time. And so there was a devotee doing alaps during the presentation there on the stage, alaps. So I asked his friend, I said, how come he's doing the alaps? Doesn't he know that Prabhupada didn't like that? He said, well, you know what he said? The devotees like it. The devotees enjoy it. That's called janam, right? And there's another thing. I mean, I'm not saying this, like I said, this is not hard and fast. It's not hard. Some people say, if you listen to the first volume, the first record that Prabhupada made, the Vande Hum, in the beginning they play the tampura and stuff, and so it's almost like a beginning alap. You follow? With an instrument, but not a voice. But Srila Prabhupada didn't like the voice alap, so that's all I can say. He didn't like it. So somebody can say, well, what's the difference between instruments and a voice, right? Right? Srila Prabhupada especially didn't like it because he said that the Sahajiyas do it. And just like in the early days of ISKCON, we Vrindavan Chand will remember, when we chanted this Panchatattva mantra, it went like this. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya,
Yeah.
Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar. Did you know this? In the early days, it was Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. And at a certain point, 1975, Srila Prabhupada said, no more bhaja. Did you know this? No more bhaja. Why? He said, too much like what the Sahajiyas do. So we're not chanting. So now nobody chants bhaja. Does anybody chant bhaja?
No.
No. So that was effective. But do other people do alaps? Yeah. So you got to be careful. I'm not saying that you can't ever do it, but Prabhupada didn't like it. So that's janam. Are there other things that Srila Prabhupada did and that people do that are maybe get excited, the devotees excited, but may not be good for pleasing Krishna?
Wild dancing.
Huh?
Wild dancing.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada didn't like a wild dancing too much. He liked this, raising your hands. I was in Atlanta last week, and my godbrother Bahushara, he might remember Bahushara. Bahushara, he was there in 1975 in Atlanta where Prabhupada was there. And the devotees were going forward and back. They were turning their backs and going backward, forward, and turning their backs and going this way. And Prabhupada stopped the dancing. He said, don't turn your back to the deities. You know that? Yes. Don't turn your back to the deities. It was a big deal in the early days of ISKCON. When the Srila Prabhupada's here and the deities are there, everybody was sideways. It was a big deal. I mean, you got chastised if you were now in it, but anyway, it was a big deal. So yeah, no wild dancing. Yeah. And so there's something called and others. No, there's a popular thing that happens where there's a stop and start. Stop. You never saw that? It's in every temple. Stop. You never know? Who started that? I know who started. Vikeshwar Pandit. He's my godbrother, dear godbrother. But did Srila Prabhupada ever do that? No. Is it a hard and fast rule that you can't do it? No. But what's the point of doing it? I'll ask people and they'll say, it's because the devotees get excited. They'll say, Janam, right? Janam. And the devotees get excited. But when you're doing it, you have to think about it. Is it for putting attention to yourself or is it putting attention to the holy name? Think about it. Consider it, right? When you stop and have you look around and everybody, Tiger, you're getting everybody's attention to you, isn't it? Most of the time, isn't it? Yeah. So is this a janam or is it for the pleasure of Krishna? I can't say. I don't know the people's hearts, but you might consider. You have to. Another thing people do is they do a lot, at the end of the line of like the Hare Krishna, they do a flourish at the end of the with the kartals. What's the point of that? When Krishna was there with Nanda Maharaj and Nanda Maharaj was doing a sacrifice, he said, what's the point of the sacrifice? Is this something given in the Vedas or just a traditional thing? Because if it's just a traditional thing, you got to know what the purpose is. Because if you don't know what the purpose is, you're not going to get any good result. Didn't he say that? He said that was Govardhan Puja. Right. So what's the purpose of at the end? I don't know. But it brings attention to yourself. Sometimes it covers over the beat of the Kirtan, the tempo. So that might be another thing that sometimes, I don't know every time, but sometimes it may be unnecessary for this janam. And then of course sundarim. Sundarim means you want to attract the opposite sex, a partner, have a good partner, which happens. In the music field, every music group, they have their groupies. You know this. People from India don't know this. But they have,
Entourage.
yeah, they're groupies, entourage. And maybe famous singers, Anup Jalota and those guys. But they'd travel and, they'd have, during my mother's time, it was the Bobby Soxers. There was Frank Sinatra, Frank Sinatra? And they would all these girls and they would be, oh, yeah. So, that can also give you a little excitement. But if you do it for that reason, that's not pleasing Krishna, right? That's not necessarily pleasing Krishna. So these are nadanam, najanam, nasundarim, these things happen. Okay, so then, should there be any rules and regulations for who leads Kirtan? I'm just going to ask questions here now, and I'm going to ask you to think about it. Like I said, this is not any, I'm not giving you a final conclusion. These are all things to consider. And this is also especially for you to know. Does it matter if the Kirtan leader, now we're talking primarily Kirtan leader in the temple, because what people do outside is a different thing, but what you do in the temple. Does it matter if the Kirtan leader follows the 4 regulative principles? Well, think about it. Why? Okay. Does it matter whether the Kirtan leader chants 16 rounds a day?
No. I don't think so.
Huh?
I don't think so. That's
Because?
what I like.
Because? Yeah, I'm not saying. Let's hear. It's okay. I'm not going against it. Tell me more. Why do you think so?
Unless he's initiated, he need not chant 16 times.
Usually that people don't. Yeah, I mean they can be aspiring for your initiation. Yeah. So these are just things to consider. Not Probably, ideally, it would be a good idea. Is it an absolute responsibility, requirement? That's up to the temple president to say. That's up to. But the principle I started out with was, it's best to hear the chanting from the lips of a pure devotee, right? Can somebody be a pure devotee when they're not chanting 16 rounds? Yeah, maybe. But we're not sure. It's probably better that they chant 16. And it's possible. Sure. It's possible. No, we're not. Anybody who, like I said in the beginning, what did I say? Anybody who chants Je Bhaje Sheboro, Abhakta Hincha, anybody who chants the holy name even once is worshipable. Didn't I say that in the beginning? Yeah. Anybody who chants the holy name once is worshipable. So that's wonderful. But we want to maximize that. Okay. Does it matter if the Kirtan leader is an initiated disciple of a bona fide spiritual master? These are just questions, right? Yeah. Does it matter whether the Kirtan leader is aware of and tries to avoid the 10 offenses in the chanting of the holy names? And tries to avoid it. Okay. All right. Yeah. Does it matter whether the Kirtan leader is aware of and tries to follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions about chanting?
They should follow.
They have to be aware of them, right?
Yes, they should follow.
Oh, so what are they? Yeah. Does it matter whether the Kirtan leader wears devotional clothing when leading Kirtan? Does it matter whether the Kirtan leader wears devotional clothing when leading the Kirtan?
Yes, it should be like that.
Why? I mean, it's just I say, like I said, I'm just throwing these questions out. I'm not giving you an answer. These are just things to consider. And so one thing is, when somebody leads a kirtan in the temple, think about this. The temple becomes like the example. You're representing the Hare Krishna movement. You're representing Srila Prabhupada. So what happens is, when somebody leads the kirtan in the temple, people say, well, they're doing it in the temple, and then you'll find that people start doing it everywhere else. It happens. Like in Philadelphia, there's one person who chanted they chant the names of every deity in the world during the arati. So, and because it's in the temple, then later I go to this person's house and guess what they're chanting? Same thing. And this person's house there. Because what you do in the temple becomes the standard for outside. Doesn't mean you can't do it outside, but so you can make an argument, just like Srila Prabhupada always chanted Hare Krishna, right? He chanted Hare Krishna, main chant. Yeah. Do people chant other things? Sure, you can. You've got George Harrison. He chanted My Sweet Lord. You got Mangalananda. You have Johnny V. Harrison. They chant. Okay, you can make an argument. Why did George Harrison chant? Prabhupada encouraged George Harrison to chant to make up songs like My Sweet Lord. But who was that for? We didn't chant My Sweet Lord in the temple, right? We did it. That's out for outside people. Outside people, to come to Krishna consciousness. But for the temple, we do pretty strictly things. Why? Because this is representing ISKCON, representing Srila Prabhupada. Because what's done in the temple becomes done by everybody else. So we just have to be a little more careful in the temple. Does that make sense?
Yes.
When like I said, when Srila Prabhupada went to the Mantra Rock dance, he had Allen Ginsberg lead the kirtan. What do you make of that? We just said that the best hear from the lips of the pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada was actually there. And when I went to South India the first time in 1975, they had a member of parliament come on stage to introduce Srila Prabhupada. And for like 20 minutes, Prabhupada was sitting there on the stage in the Vyasa, and this person was just Mayavadi philosophy. Complete Mayavadi philosophy for 20 minutes. What do you make of that? What do you make of that? You're not supposed to hear Mayavadi philosophy. What do you make of that? I made it that Prabhupada is engaging this person in Krishna service. Yeah, so even though he was off, still, because he had his position, people were going to listen to him. Same thing with like Allen Ginsberg. At the time, he was a big shot. People would listen to him. But if I go there and start standing on the stage and start spouting Mayavadi philosophy, no. You follow? Does it make sense? Yeah. So these are kinds of things yeah. Is there evidence that Lord Chaitanya or Srila Prabhupada ever had children lead kirtan during a Rath Yatra parade or an assembly or during a performance of kirtan? These are things to consider, that's all.
I feel like in one of the disciple books, there was a time one of the devotees mentioned that he did let a child lead kirtan.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I'm just, these are questions. They're not all negative, positive. They're questions, yeah. Does it matter whether a kirtan leader is a man or a woman?
No.
Does it matter whether a kirtan leader is a good singer or a good musician?
It doesn't matter.
To a certain extent, it matters.
Good singer.
You'd hope, if you want to keep people to follow. But sometimes they're probably to have someone who wasn't such a great kirtan leader lead. Sometimes, because as you said, we didn't even talk about the real thing is the sincerity of the chanting.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, that's my third. I know it's time. It's after 4 o'clock. Is this helpful at all? I hope. This is just this. This is all beginning stuff. It's like ABC stuff. That was 3 of 6. Those others are more kind of towards Srila Jayadvaita Swami stuff. So these are pretty distinct from Jayadvaita Maharaj's stuff. Did you read his book by any chance? Okay. Jayadvaita Maharaj's book on Srila Prabhupada's Kirtan standards.
The book.
Yeah.
Yes. I stand ready.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes. I can copy it. Yes.
So these points are different than Jayadvaita Maharaj. He makes some very strong points. There's a few things which is very interesting, because he says that the harmonium is not to be used in kirtan. You know that?
Yes.
So if he says, Prabhupada said don't use. Actually, the quote was there's one letter where Prabhupada wrote to Bahudak in Vancouver. He said the harmonium should not be used for kirtan and arti. So if I said, you give me rice and dal. That's together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I say give me rice or dal,
Right.
if you give me rice, that's okay. If you give me dal, that's it. So kirtan and arti, one could interpret it to mean together. You shouldn't use harmonium in arti.
While you're doing it.
Yes. So because really in arti you're supposed to stand up. So that's how I understood it back then. Now you can make an argument that it means anytime doing Hare Krishna Kirtan. So I went through the Lilamrita and Srila Prabhupada Vedabase, and I found many instances of Srila Prabhupada either encouraging people to play the harmonium for Hare Krishna Kirtan or Prabhupada himself doing it. So, that's one of the areas that should be. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare
Take care.
Krishna.